So the modifications we're going to do on these forks from 1986, I believe, R80GS, we're going to improve the suspension aspect of this motorcycle greatly by installing some upgraded parts, including the fork springs, and there's a device. It's called a gold valve emulator. This is from Racetech, and this is going to help the hydraulic portion of the forks become a lot smoother. The exchange of the oil through the valves, the way the damping normally works, it's going to change that whole system by installing these parts. And the Racetech springs are also a big improvement. Not only do they're matched to the rider weight as far as the spring rate, as far as the resistance that they give, so they're set up from the beginning to work better for the individual rider on that particular bike. So there's that. The way this all works, we have to modify. There's some modifications that we have to do. We're not just installing these parts without any changes to the existing parts. The main thing that we do is take this. This is called a damping rod, and what this does, this is what the hydraulic portion of the suspension. This is the working part of that. And as this moves up and down or goes through the fork, it's being pushed and pulled through the oil in the fork. And the way the hydraulics work, as they go through these orifices, that oil is working to slow the action of the fork down through the oil flowing through here. Which on the stock setup, it works, but it's a real basic, simple system, and it's not very sophisticated, I guess. It's not very, it's very simple. So we're going to make that more we're going to give it a lot better action by increasing what we end up doing is we end up adding holes to this so that the oil actually flows through this part. And the part that was doing the damping before, we're going to bypass that basically by drilling larger holes and more holes so that when the oil goes through this isn't really doing the damping anymore. What we're going to end up doing is installing one of these gold valves on top of this damping rod. So the way this new damping device, this emulator, it sits on top of this. The old damping rod that used to control the oil flow to smooth out the suspension of the ride on the bike. We're going to open that up and let the oil flow through so that it goes through this, which is adjustable because the harder you push the oil, the higher this comes up and allows more oil so that you don't get what they call stiction, which is if you try to push too much oil through a set orifice, it's going to stop. It's going to get stuck. This keeps that from happening, and it adjusts the damping to the needs of how hard of a hit that you take with your front wheel. It's still going to move smoothly instead of getting bound up like the old system would have. So as you're riding down the road, you're riding on the springs, and those are bouncing up and down. And this is what is controlling that or smoothing that out with that oil flow. It's keeping it from being bouncy, or it's keeping the wheel moving smoothly, which makes a huge difference in the comfort of the ride. That's it. When this thing's all put together, it's gonna ride like modern suspension, really. It's because of the way. That's the older bikes. What they don't have that the new bikes do is the sophistication of the damping systems. And this system is what's going to bring this up to date as far as making that damping system work a much, much better way. That's pretty much it. So we've just drilled the holes. We haven't cleaned anything up. We're gonna smooth this out and clean out all this leftover shavings and stuff. But that's what you end up with to increase the oil flow that goes through the damping rod.
You'll never move when you're in my way, and I never step to the side. You never shut up and listen to me, and so I never care when you cry. Don't ever expect too much. Dr. Jacobs yourself on the side of the road. Don't ever expect to touch something that on contact will make your mind explode.
Alright, since we got the holes drilled in the damping rods, we assembled the forks, put the damping rods back in the stanchions, reconnected them to the lowers, installed the spacers, the emulators, and set the preload on the springs to about 15 millimeters, and then we removed the springs. We set the oil level to 120 millimeters, was prescribed per Racetech, and put the springs back in and capped them off, and now these things are ready to go. New improved modern suspension in the old antique forks here.
You never open up your eyes, take a look around at what you surround. You never put yourself in someone else's shoes, because for you that might be profound.